I still remember that morning as if it just happened. The kind of morning you never really forget, because it feels like your whole life is holding its breath, waiting for something. I woke up before the sun that day, not because I wanted to, but because my mind wouldn't let me sleep. My heart kept pounding in my chest, reminding me that today was different. Today was the interview, the chance I had prayed for, the chance I thought might finally change everything. But when I opened my eyes and looked around the tiny room I called home, reality hit me like a stone. The cracked walls, the broken floor, the sound of my mother coughing in the other corner. It all felt so heavy. My heart whispered that I wasn't ready. My hands trembled as I searched through my clothes, trying to find something, anything that looked decent enough to wear. And then, the part I dreaded most. I glanced down at my feet. No shoes. Just the same old, worn-out slippers I had hidden under the bed, torn beyond repair. I had nothing else. Nothing. That's when the fear really started to claw at me. How could I walk into an office like that? How could I stand in front of people who would judge me with one look, who would decide my worth before I even opened my mouth? For a moment, I wanted to give up. I wanted to stay home, bury myself under the thin blanket, and pretend the opportunity never existed. But then I thought of my mother. I thought of her tired eyes, of the nights she went to bed hungry so I could have a little food. I thought of the dreams I had whispered to myself when the world was quiet, that one day maybe, just maybe, I could change our story. So I stood up. My hands shook as I washed my face with cold water, tied my scarf neatly around my head, and told myself over and over, "They will see more than your feet. They will see your fire. They have to." The streets were still damp with dew as I stepped outside, barefoot now, because even the broken slippers felt like they would betray me. Each step against the rough ground stung, but I forced myself forward. People stared. Some whispered. A few even laughed. And every sound cut into me, but I lifted my chin higher. I told myself this pain was temporary, but the chance waiting for me, that could change everything. By the time I reached the tall glass building where the interview was being held, my legs felt weak. The doors stood like gates to another world, clean, shining, polished, a world I didn't belong to. I hesitated. My reflection in the glass mocked me, a poor girl with trembling hands, no shoes, and hope that looked too fragile to survive. But I pushed forward. My heart pounded so hard I thought the whole room would hear it when I stepped inside. The lobby smelled of perfume and new leather. The floor was so shiny I could see my bare feet reflected in it, a painful reminder of what set me apart from everyone else. Then I saw them, the other candidates, 25 of them, all dressed perfectly, sitting tall in their expensive suits and polished shoes. They looked like they had walked straight out of glossy magazines, confident and untouchable. And then there was me, barefoot, plain, carrying nothing but a folder that looked as tired as I felt. The whispers began immediately. Some were subtle, just glances and raised eyebrows. Others weren't so kind. A few laughed under their breath, shaking their heads as if I was some kind of joke. One girl leaned toward another and whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "She's not serious. She can't be." I wanted to disappear. My cheeks burned, and for a second, shame almost crushed me. But I held on to one thought. I didn't come this far to leave empty-handed. So I walked to the chair, sat down among them, and tried to steady my breath. I told myself over and over again, "Alec, they don't know your story. They don't know your strength. Prove them wrong." The waiting felt endless. Every time the door opened and another candidate was called, my stomach twisted tighter. Some came back smiling, others nervous, but all of them looked more belonging than I ever could. And I kept thinking, what will they say when they see me? Will they throw me out before I even speak? Then suddenly I heard it. My name. Alec Rose. The air around me froze. The whispers quieted. Every eye turned toward me. I stood, my knees trembling so badly I thought I might collapse. And as I walked barefoot across that polished floor toward the door, I could feel their stares burning into my back. Some were mocking, some were curious, but none believed I could belong here. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't believe it either. But with every step, I told myself this: your feet may be bare, but your spirit is not. Walk in, Alec. Walk in like you were meant to. When I reached the door, my hand hovered over the handle. My heart thundered in my chest, louder than anything I had ever felt. I wasn't just about to enter a room. I was about to step into the moment that could decide my entire future. And as I pushed the door open, I had no idea that what waited for me inside would change my life forever. The moment I stepped into that room, it felt like the air changed. The chatter outside, the whispers, the nervous shuffling of the other candidates, it all disappeared. Inside, it was silent, almost too silent, like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. I could feel the cold of the polished floor pressing against my bare feet, reminding me of everything I didn't have. My heart was racing so hard that it hurt, but I forced myself to keep walking, one slow step at a time. The panel sat at the far end of the long table, their suits sharp, their expressions unreadable, and at the very center of them, the CEO himself. His presence filled the room in a way that words can't fully capture. Calm, powerful, like he could see right through every mask people wore. His eyes met mine for a second, and it was like he was studying me, not with mockery, not with kindness, but with a strange curiosity. I stood in front of them, clutching the folder in my hands so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a second, no one spoke. The silence was unbearable. I felt exposed, like every flaw of mine was being measured, every weakness judged. Then one of the interviewers finally broke the silence. His voice was sharp, professional, but with an edge of disbelief. "You came here barefoot?" The words echoed in my ears. A few of the others shifted in their seats, trying to hide their smirks. My throat went dry. I wanted to explain, to tell them how hard it had been to even make it here, but the words caught in my chest. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Yes," I whispered. Then I raised my head a little higher. "Yes, I did." Another panelist leaned forward, her brows furrowed. "Did you think this was a joke? This is a serious interview for a serious position. Appearance matters. Professionalism matters." Her words stung, but I reminded myself of why I was there. I had already faced worse than this. I couldn't let their judgment crush me now. So I took a deep breath and said, "I know what it looks like. I know I don't have what everyone else here has. But I came because I believe I have something more important: determination, resilience, and a fire that has carried me further than my circumstances ever should have." For a moment, the room was silent again. My words hung in the air, fragile, waiting to be crushed. And then one of the interviewers let out a short, bitter laugh. Resilience won't write reports. Determination won't manage clients. What makes you think we should choose you over 25 others who came prepared? My star mark dropped, but I held my ground. Their doubt, their mockery, it wasn't new. I had lived with it my whole life. People had always looked at me and seen only what I lacked. Shoes, clothes, wealth, but never what I carried inside. I straightened my shoulders, even though my knees were trembling. Because, I said softly, I know how to survive when survival wasn't guaranteed. I know how to push forward when everything tells you to stop. I may not look like them, but I will work harder, longer, and with more heart than anyone else in this room. That is why. My words were bold, maybe too bold, but I couldn't hold them back. This was my one chance, and I refused to let it slip away in silence. The CEO's eyes narrowed slightly, his expression still unreadable. He tapped his pen against the table, as if weighing something in his mind. And then, unexpectedly, he asked, "Tell us about the hardest thing you've ever faced, and what you did about it." The question hit me deep. Memories rushed back. Nights of hunger. My mother's frail body working past exhaustion. The times I had to choose between studying and sleeping because candles burned out too quickly. My chest tightened as I tried to find the words. My life has been a constant fight, I began, my voice unsteady, but growing stronger with each word. There was a time when my mother was too sick to work, and we had no money, no food, nothing. I was just a teenager, but I worked in the fields all day, studied at night, and cared for her in between. I was exhausted, broken, but I didn't give up. I couldn't give up, because if I stopped, we wouldn't survive. I paused, my eyes burning, but I refused to let the tears fall. That is the hardest thing I've faced. And I got through it because I refused to let circumstances decide my future. I kept going, even when everything told me I couldn't. That's who I am. The room was still. No laughter, no whispers, just silence. I didn't know if it was a good silence or the kind that comes before rejection, but I stood there, waiting. Then one of the panelists leaned back, Sita, haking his head slightly. Words are easy. Everyone can tell a story, but actions matter. How can we trust that you'll deliver when it counts? That was the moment I felt the shift inside me. My fear turned into fire. My shame turned into strength. I looked straight at him and said, "Because if I can walk into this room barefoot, knowing every eye would judge me before I even spoke, and still stand here, still fight for my chance, then I can face anything. I don't run from challenges. I walk into them, no matter how much they hurt." This time, the silence felt different. He had no reply. And yet, even as I spoke, I could feel the tension rising again. Some of them still doubted me, still saw me as nothing more than a poor girl out of place. I could sense it. Their eyes said it all. And then came the question, the one that would push me to my very edge. "If you had nothing, not even shoes," one of them said slowly, almost cruelly, "how can you prove that you deserve everything this job offers?" The words hung heavy in the air, sharp and cutting. My breath caught. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might break. I knew. This was the moment everything would either fall apart or it would turn. And as I opened my mouth to answer, I felt every eye lock onto me. waiting to see if I would shatter or rise. When that question hit me, it felt like someone had taken a knife and twisted it right into my chest. I froze for a second. My breath caught in my throat. The cruelty of it wasn't in the words alone. It was in the way they were spoken. Cold, doubting, designed to break me down in front of everyone. For a moment, the room blurred. I could feel my hands trembling, my heart hammering so violently that I thought I might collapse right there. And then something inside me snapped, not in weakness, but in strength. I looked up, straight into their eyes, and said, my voice low but
It's steady. Shoes don't define worth. Money doesn't define worth. Comfort doesn't define worth. What defines worth is what you do when you have nothing left to give, yet you keep going.
That is what makes someone deserving. The panels shifted uneasily. I could see it in their faces, some still unconvinced, some startled by the fire in my voice. But I wasn't done. I took a deep breath, letting every ounce of pain, every scar of my past, fuel my words. You want proof? Look at me. I'm standing here barefoot, yes, but I'm still standing. I walked into this building knowing you would judge me, knowing you would see nothing but a poor, desperate girl. And still, I came, because I know my value, even when no one else does. I could feel the weight of my voice filling the room. No one interrupted me now. No one laughed. My whole life, I've been told I don't belong, that I don't have enough, that I'm not enough, and maybe to some people, I never will be. But here's the truth. Every single step I've taken, barefoot or not, has brought me here. Every sacrifice, every struggle, every night I stayed awake, working, praying, surviving, it all led to this moment. That is my proof. My life itself is my proof. The silence after those words was deafening. The panel didn't move. They didn't speak. But I noticed something subtle. The CEO leaned forward ever so slightly, his eyes locked onto me, his pen no longer tapping. He was listening. Really listening. But then, another voice cut through the stillness. A woman at the end of the table said sharply, "Passion is admirable, but passion doesn't guarantee results. We need discipline. We need competence. Can you honestly say you have that?" Her words almost made me falter again, but instead of shrinking back, I lifted my chin higher. "Yes," I said firmly, "because passion without discipline burns out. But I have lived every day of my life under discipline, not by choice, but by survival. When you wake up at dawn to work so your family can eat, when you study under candlelight because electricity is a luxury, when you push your body until it aches just to keep going, that is discipline, that is competence, and that is why I will never fail once given the chance." This time, there was no smirk, no mocking laugh, just silence. The kind of silence that comes when people don't know what to say. For the first time, I felt something shift in the room. The power wasn't all theirs anymore. Some of it was mine. And then, the CEO finally spoke. His voice was calm, deep, commanding. "Miss Rose, why this company? Out of all the places you could have gone, why here? What is it that you want from us?" His question stopped me cold. My mind raced. What did I want? A job, yes. Security, yes. But it was more than that. Much more. I looked at him, my voice softening. Because this company is known for building more than just profits. It builds people. And I want to prove that even someone like me, someone who started with nothing, can become someone. I want to work, to grow, to transform my life. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance. Just one chance to show you who I really am. The CEO's expression didn't change, but his eyes, there was something there. Something I couldn't quite name. Curiosity? Respect? Maybe both. Then he leaned back slowly and said, "Interesting." The others exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could feel the tension. Some of them wanted me gone. Others weren't sure anymore. And I stood there, every muscle in my body tight, waiting for the final blow. Minutes felt like hours. My mind was screaming, "Please, please don't reject me. Not after everything. Not after I gave you my soul in this room." Finally, the CEO raised his hand, silencing the whispers. His eyes never left mine. "Miss Rose," he said, his voice measured, "you may wait outside. We will deliberate." My stomach dropped. My knees almost gave way. Wait, outside? That could mean anything. It could mean I was done. It could mean they just wanted to be polite before throwing me away. I forced myself to nod, whispering, "Thank you," before turning and walking out of the room. The hallway felt colder than before. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my folder. I sat on the bench, my bare feet pressed against the marble floor, and I wrapped my arms around myself. Every sound, every second of silence on the other side of that door felt like torture. My mind replayed every word I had said, every expression on their faces, every doubt, every flicker of hope. And then the door opened. One of the assistants stepped out, her face unreadable. She looked at me and said, "Miss Rose, the CEO would like to see you again." My heart almost stopped. Again? What did that mean? Was it rejection, acceptance, or something far worse? I stood up on shaky legs, every nerve in my body screaming with fear and anticipation. As I walked back into that room, I had no idea that my life was about to change forever. When I stepped back into that room, my whole body felt like it was floating, like I wasn't even touching the ground. My chest was tight, my breath shallow, and in my mind, one thought repeated over and over. This is it. This is the moment. The door closed behind me with a soft click. But to me, it sounded like the slam of fate. All eyes turned toward me again. The long table, the scattered papers, the faces I could not read. It all came rushing back. But this time, I didn't feel like a stranger walking in. This time, I felt like someone on trial. The CEO's gaze locked onto mine the moment I entered. His eyes were calm, steady, and unreadable. That made it worse. At least when people laughed at me, I knew where I stood. But his silence, his stillness, it made me feel naked, exposed, as if he could see right into my soul. "Miss Rose?" he said slowly, gesturing toward the chair opposite him. "Please, sit." I hesitated for half a heartbeat, then walked forward and lowered myself into the seat. My bare feet brushed against the cold marble floor again, grounding me, reminding me of who I was and where I came from. I clenched my hands in my lap, praying they wouldn't shake. The CEO leaned forward slightly, folding his hands together. "You spoke with passion earlier," he began. "You defended yourself with strength, but passion and words are not enough for us to make a decision. I need to know something deeper." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Deeper," I whispered. "Yes," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. I want to know what drives you. What is it that keeps you fighting, Miss Rose? Why not give up, like so many others in your position already have? The question cut through me like lightning. I felt my chest tighten, my heart pound, and my eyes burn. Memories flooded my mind. The nights I went hungry, the mornings I woke up to a world that felt colder than my own skin, the endless rejection, the whispers behind my back, the shame of being seen as nothing. And then I thought of my mother. I lifted my gaze, forcing back the tears, and I spoke. What drives me? The fact that I promised my mother I would never stop. I promised her that no matter how hard it got, no matter how many times I was beaten down, I would keep walking forward, even barefoot, even bleeding, because she believed in me when no one else did. She told me I could become more than my pain, and I refuse. My voice broke, but I pushed through. I refused to let her down. The room was silent, dead silent. My chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, my hands trembling in my lap, but I didn't look away. I held my head high, even with tears shining in my eyes. The CEO didn't move for a long time. Then, very slowly, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled, as though he had been holding his breath. His eyes softened, just slightly, but it was enough to make my heart stumble. I see, he murmured. One of the other panelists, the same woman who had doubted me earlier, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. With respect, sir, she said, her tone sharp. This is a company, not a charity. We cannot base decisions on emotion alone. The CEO turned his head toward her, his expression unreadable. And yet, he said calmly, sometimes it is emotion that reveals the truth more clearly than numbers ever could. My heart leapt. For the first time, I felt something like hope flicker inside me. He turned back to me. Miss Rose, he said, I want to give you something. A test. Not of knowledge, not of numbers, but of trust. If you pass it, the position is yours. If you fail... He let the words hang in the air. Heavy, sharp, final. I swallowed hard. What kind of test? He studied me for a moment, his gaze piercing. Then he said, a chance to prove not only your words, but your spirit. I will not tell you the details now. You will receive them tomorrow morning. But understand this. This test will push you to your limits. It will demand more than just effort. It will demand truth. My body went cold. Tomorrow morning. A test I knew nothing about. My mind screamed in panic, but my voice, when it came, was steady. I'll do it. The CEO's lips curved, just barely, into the ghost of a smile. Good. He stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. The others followed his lead, some looking displeased, others intrigued. But I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone. Then the CEO's voice broke through my daze one last time. Miss Rose, he said, his eyes never leaving mine, remember this. Some people walk through life with shoes that carry them. Others walk barefoot, carrying themselves. Tomorrow, we will see which one you are. And with that, he walked out of the room. I sat frozen in my chair, my mind spinning, my chest tight with fear and fire all at once. What did he mean? What kind of test was waiting for me? Would I survive it? Or would it crush me? As I finally stood and left the room, the cut, whispers followed me down the hallway. My bare feet echoed against the marble floor,
every step reminding me that tomorrow, everything could change. I didn't know if I would win. I didn't know if I would fail. But I knew one thing with every beat of my trembling heart. Whatever this test was, I would face it. Because I had no choice. Because this was more than a job. This was my life. And tomorrow, my life would be decided. The next morning, I woke before the sun again. But this time my heart wasn't just pounding with fear. It was a mixture of hope and dread. I barely slept. Every thought of last night's words, the CEO's gaze, and the promise of a test consumed me. My hands trembled as I dressed in the only clean clothes I had, the scarf tied neatly, my bare feet brushing against the cold floor, reminding me that I was still the same girl who had walked barefoot into that room yesterday. But this time, I had a purpose. The office felt different in the early morning light. The marble floors gleamed, but the whispers of judgment hadn't yet started. I walked to the front desk, my steps cautious, yet my shoulders straight. A young assistant handed me an envelope, her eyes flicking nervously toward the CEO's office. I could feel the weight of it in my hands, the paper heavy with possibility. I tore it open, and my eyes scanned the words inside. It wasn't a test of technical knowledge. It wasn't about reports or numbers. It was about character, about decisions, about trust, about heart. The instructions were simple but terrifying. I was to walk into the community, meet people I had never met, hear their struggles, and find a way to help them in a meaningful, practical way. Without any money, without any support from the company, only using my mind, creativity, and willpower. My chest tightened. I could almost feel the weight of every doubter's gaze from yesterday pressing due, one on me. Could I really do this? Could I turn my own experience of struggle into something that mattered to others? I stepped outside, the sun warm on my face, the city alive with the sounds of life. Life I had always observed from the margins. But today, I was part of it. I started walking, meeting families, children, people older than me who carried burdens I could barely imagine. I listened to them, really listened, feeling their pain as if it were mine. And then I started finding solutions. Small ones at first, clever ways to bring relief or hope without a single cent. Hours passed. I ran errands, spoke with shopkeepers, organized small help for a sick child, arranged for an elderly woman to receive groceries. Every challenge forced me to think, to act, to push beyond exhaustion. My bare feet ached, my body screamed for rest. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when the lives of these strangers depended, even slightly, on my effort. By the time I returned to the office, my hands scratched and sore, my clothes wrinkled, and my hair messy. I felt an unfamiliar sensation. Pride. Exhausted pride. I had faced the test, not in theory, not in a safe room, but in reality. I had been raw, vulnerable, and yet I had given everything I had. The CEO waited in the conference room, leaning against the table, his expression unreadable. "So," he said slowly, his eyes scanning me from head to toe, "you walked into their lives, alone, barefoot, with nothing but your own resourcefulness. Tell me, what did you learn?" I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "I learned," I said, "that the world underestimates people like me. But it also taught me that compassion, courage, and ingenuity are stronger than privilege. I realized that my past struggles were not weaknesses, they were preparation. And I realized that helping others gives you more strength than surviving alone ever could."
For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then almost silently, he nodded. Slowly, deliberately, he said, "Miss Rose, welcome me to the team." I couldn't believe it. My chest felt tight. My eyes stung. The world seemed to tilt and spin, but in the best possible way. I had done it. I had proven that even barefoot, even poor, even doubted, I could rise above. The room filled with polite applause from the panelists, but I barely noticed. My mind was with my mother, and with every person I had met today, and with the thought that maybe, finally, someone saw me for who I truly was. And then the CEO spoke again, softer this time, almost as if he were sharing a secret. "Remember this, Miss Rose. The world will always judge by appearances, by circumstance, by comfort. But you have walked barefoot through life and found your own way. Never forget that strength." I nodded, tears spilling freely now. "I won't," I whispered. As I left the office that day, I didn't just feel victorious. I felt transformed. Every step I took on the pavement, bare or not, carried purpose. Every glance, every whisper, every doubt I had ever faced seemed lighter somehow. And I knew this. Life hadn't given me shoes, but it had given me resilience, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. And I couldn't help but ask myself, and maybe everyone listening, a question that would stay with me forever. How many of us walk through the world barefoot, carrying fire that no one sees? And how many chances are we missing simply because no one looked closely enough to notice? That day, I learned something that no interview, no company, no success could ever teach me. Being seen for who you truly are is worth more than every pair of shoes in the world.
Think about it. Could this happen to you? Some stories aren't just heard, they're felt. Behind every truth, there's a hidden fear. This story won't just shake your mind, it'll haunt your soul. Who could imagine the truth would be this terrifying? The story ends, but the questions stay alive.